broken system, chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, oh, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Fencing on the screen, flashing perfect teeth. But behind those eyes, just rotting greed. Politicians turn to whispers beneath. They all just get what they need. Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Good morning. Welcome to the bullpen. Well, good afternoon to some people, including little Chad, but for me, it's morning, 10:30 in the morning. It's early, but yeah, we are here for another week to talk about the week in politics. How was your week, little Chad?
Job search, job search, job search. It was good. That's all I've been doing. So,
Yeah,
but I've
I
got
know. I know
leads.
you have 2 interviews planned. Any other
Yep,
ones coming in?
got it. Picked up a third. So
Oh,
yeah, at least the first step is these virtual ones where you have to do the self interview where you record yourself answering questions and send that off, and then that gets you screened for the next round. I
where
hate
you just
modern
plug in
job
the
searching.
question into AI and have it spit out the
No,
best
you have
answer
to
for
like
you.
record. I mean, you could. I mean, I suppose I could have the other screen going and doing that, but that seems like it
Well,
would be
that's what the
worse.
teenagers are doing, and the 20-year-olds is they've got the off the camera, they've got the AI feeding them an answer so that they can answer exactly what somebody might want to hear.
I did see a quote from like a recruiter who could tell like someone had like an AI earpiece feeding them answers. I was like, why would you even need that? I mean, you're gonna just do the interview. It's not gonna
Yeah.
help you in the long run.
To be honest, though, half the questions that they ask in the interview are just stupid.
Brahma, can you give an example of a difficult situation and how you resolved it?
Yeah. Well, you
Like,
see, I was talking with Mr. Grant Gregory about tariffs Wednesday night.
oh yeah, Slender ruled the day in Risk Legacy yesterday because this is funny story. You'll like this, Brahma being a gamer. Right when we started, I drew first turn because in Risk Legacy, once you get to like a certain level, you have to like you do a lottery for
Mm,
first placement, first turn, whatever.
yeah.
I was last placement in like first turn, so I placed my headquarters like 2 countries over from someone else. and I immediately on first turn eliminated them. It was awesome. And that cleared the deck so Slender could run the board from the other side. I was at victory conditions for like most of the game, but I failed my like death ball attempt on
Yeah.
Risk because I just the person who was left I had to take out had the fortified base bonus, and I
Mhm.
just didn't get the rolls. So I made my run, and so then I had to duck back, and they were so worried about me. Slender just slowly crept over the other side of the board until he had all of South America, North America, and a chunk of Africa. He
So
was
for
like,
once, your friends didn't target Slender, because I know Slender feels targeted at all times in games.
well, I immediately what I did it was for Slender because this other player I took out was the one who kind of screwed up the gameplay the last round. So
Mhm.
I he was all mad because I knocked him right out. He got to come in because it's Risk, but he starts complaining like, Why'd you do that?" And I was like, "Well, you screwed up playing the game last round, so I felt I did that on a Slender's behalf."
There's nothing worse than getting knocked out at the beginning of a game of Risk and then having to sit there for the next 3.5 hours waiting for the game to be over.
Oh no! Well, this one you can come back in as long as there was an open territory, and he could.
Uh,
The problem is his faction, his bonus was getting extra troops for each HQ he controlled, and I
so he,
immediately knocked it out. So he never had an HQ, and he never got
right,
his bonus.
bonus
He
not
was,
working.
yeah, he was salty on that. So it was fun. So that was a good thing. It took my mind off, sending LinkedIn and Indeed messages and resumes. Modern job searching is an absolute cluster. You never get a. I've sent out so many resumes, and I'm lucky if I get 10% that respond in any way. Let
Well, you're
alone,
marking yourself as a they them, right?
I should. I usually just choose not to answer, but I should just go full bore. But I don't know that that helps now with Trump like freezing money.
I don't know.
Yeah. So,
Worth a try. Just a
speak
just a
speaking of
experiment.
speaking of they them, there was a they them non-binary person holding the Senate floor for like 25 hours, making a spectacle of himself
Spartacus?
and pretending he was the most important person in the world. And it was, what was the old quote, a sound and a great fury and sound signifying nothing. Like, he did
Yeah.
nothing. There was, what did he accomplished? Nothing. What did you accomplish, Cory Booker? Nothing.
Well, he's now the face of the DNC in his own mind again. So, yeah, Spartacus talked for what, 25 hours, broke the record to basically get nothing out there other than he's unhappy with Trump. Great use of the
Yeah,
filibuster.
it is such a, yeah. I don't understand. Like, the filibuster, as it's envisioned when the Senate rules were set up, is designed to be holding the floor to keep business from happening, and eventually, when you fail to hold it, I mean, the way we think of it would be what Mr. Smith goes to Washington, where he wouldn't yield and he spoke for all that,
Jimmy Stewart.
yeah. Which in the real world, I think Jimmy Stewart, when he collapsed and yielded the floor, he would have just have been kicked out. No one would have cared, and he would have been
And
brought
then we
up on
go on with
charges.
business.
Yeah. So just like in this case, he held the floor for roughly 25 hours, just
Hmm. Just long
and
enough to break the record.
just long enough to break the record. So, like Strom Thurmond, he was probably wearing his diapers to make sure he could hold the floor. Did
Yeah,
his thing.
imagine the stench coming off of that one.
Oh, yeah.
At least he
And
didn't audibly fart like who was that, Swalwell?
yeah, that was he was the one who when he's not with Fang Fang.
When he's not banging a Chinese spy, he's crapping himself on national TV.
What do you think the tariffs impact the money he was paying or getting from the Chinese?
It would seem likely. I mean, I'm sure we put a tariff on the spies from China as well.
There's Slenders from Macbeth. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. That is the if you want to sum up what Cory Booker's whole spiel was, it's that. He, he went up there, tried to pretend that they were robbing grandma and stealing Social Security and doing all this other stuff, and they didn't do anything. But there,
It's funny because on Twitter, we're always all the crazy leftist white women rants. Everybody's like, it's always there in the eyes. Booker may be the male that most personifies that from the left, having the crazy eyes.
funny thing about Booker, he dated
Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson, but at no time did that beard ever become visible on his face. I'm just throwing that out there.
True.
Because there's a lot of allegations that follow him coming from his New Jersey days about
But
well,
we know
he's a
from
senator
Claire
from New
that
Jersey.
she was willing to ATM.
I mean, if you're dating Cory Booker, that's probably a prerequisite.
True.
So, my opinion, that is a statement of opinion.
Slender Booker's own eyes hate him so much they're trying to escape.
I think we should do a political version of chat music for politicians because
Good.
Cory Booker would be one of them. That crazy lady with the purple hair from Connecticut could be another one who does the silly, like, using modern slang
I
TikTok
truly
videos.
did not know that was a woman.
You thought it was a
I really
Skeksis
thought that was,
from the Dark Crystal.
yeah. Yeah, it was Chamberlain. But no, I legitimately thought that was a guy pretending to be a woman.
Yeah, I don't. It might be. It's a Democrat. It could
Yeah, it's hard
always
to
be
tell
that way.
anymore on that side. We
But
sound too quiet.
do we? And I
I don't
wonder
know
if
how to fix that because we should both be level to each other. And
I'll check the Windows settings because Windows does like to play. Like I don't.
we did have a Windows update yesterday.
No, it looks like it's coming in. I'll just adjust and do that. I'll go
That,
complete
oh,
ASMR.
now you're full.
I'm right on the mic now.
Right
I'm
on
gonna
the
go.
mic.
I'm gonna go NPR. We're just gonna look and we're gonna talk about politics and things.
Oh, hell yeah. Actually, Windows did adjust mine down for the first time in months.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
It took it down to 62%. So
Somebody needs to find out. There's enough people who are using microphones for shit that they need to fix that.
yeah, you would think that, hey, stop touching our sound settings every single time we boot up the computer.
You know what? It's trying to force you into goddamn Teams because Teams is the only place where it doesn't mess with your mic settings.
Right.
And man, is every business moving to using Teams instead of Zoom and all the rest.
Goj, do we ever sound over caffeinated? It's me and little Chad.
I have never been accused. I think one time on the show I got accused of being emotional and it was shocking. Copied thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. That was what, 4 months ago?
It was probably something like that. Somebody did something really stupid in politics and it finally broke my calm.
Yeah, you raised your voice slightly, maybe a decibel.
Eric is right. There's a very specific overlap in cadence and tone between golf announcing and NPR. That's
DeChambeau on the 18th.
a
6
tradition
feet
like no
for
other.
birdie.
Yeah, is Rory still winning? I guess I don't.
I don't know.
saw
I
that.
haven't checked in.
I mean, we're about to begin our 4 months of hockey playoffs. So
Indeed. Starting Saturday.
oh,
Good morning, WG, for $20. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you, bud. His team is getting ready to start the playoffs. The Canes.
nice. First time ever the Bruins, Rangers, and Penguins not in the playoffs. Not one of those teams.
Yep. goes, "You've never sounded over caffeinated, but I'm tempted to hold a mirror under your noses this morning. You need proof of life?"
Yeah, there we go. So
Rory's in first, Bryson's in
yeah,
second
it
at
looks
the
like
moment.
two-stroke lead over Bryson, which in a major is not that can evaporate on Sunday on one hole. So don't even
Yeah, I watched a
not a
guy
big deal.
yesterday 4 putt from a foot and a half.
Yeah, it's
He had
like
already double bogeyed the hole before, and then like he putted from about 10 to 15 feet, missed it, and then he was just going to tap in, skirts it by, goes to the other side of the hole, hits it again, trying to tap in instead of taking any time, skirts it by, and then finally marks, and then takes his time. He's now at like 5 feet away after a foot and a half gimme, essentially, and then finally sinks it. But it's like, yeah, you just gave up 4 strokes on in the Masters, so I think you're done.
yeah, and I mean the biggest one that you get meltdowns in is tends to be with the U.S. Open because they actually purposefully make the U.S. Open as difficult as possible. Like there's been U.S. Opens where people win with like just sometimes a couple over. I think I've seen one where it was a
Like at
couple over
Bethpage
par.
Black.
Yep. They because the guys who set up the U.S. Open, I saw an interview once. They're like, you know how you feel when you play a PGA course as a regular golfer, and they're like, yeah. It's like that's how we want
We try
PGA
to
golfers to
recreate that for
feel
them.
when they play our course. We want them
Right.
to just melt down, like, because golf should not be easy. I was like, good for you, make the pros look ridiculous. And then I think that was around the year where Phil Mickelson had the absolute meltdown where he like put up like a 12 over. Anyway, golf is not the most
Phil does
entertaining.
do that every now and then, but that's the joy of watching Phil Mickelson play golf.
He's the
He never
closest thing
just
to
hits
Tin
the
Cup.
shot. He
He's
really
like,
is.
yeah, he's like Kevin Costner in Tin Cup. He's like, I'm going for it. It's like people might
Well,
not remember if you win. It's like, but they'll remember you're 12.
and they'll remember your celebratory 1/2 inch in the air jump.
All right, I think yeah, we'll get into the chat into the.
Fine, Slender. We'll get to politics.
All right, so we moved on from Cory Booker was the beginning of the week, but I think these politicians need to understand basically the life cycle of any event now with Trump in office is rating about
About a day
four
and a half.
hours. Not even 4 hours. It's 4 hours because at any given time you're going to get court decisions from appeals courts, from Supreme Court. You're going to get
From a
Trump.
lower court trying to bar Trump from doing something.
You're going to get Trump dropping tariffs and de minimis adjustments on China. You're going to get China putting in retaliatory tariffs. You're going to you're going to get the treasury market blowing up. Then you're going to fill
You're
up.
going
Then
to get the stock market crashing and then having the biggest gain in like, what, 15 years?
then
One day
crashing
gain?
again, but then going right back up 600 after it went down another 1200, but in the same day. So the swing is a net even though it finished positive 6, it was like a 2,000 point swing in a day.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been fun.
yeah,
I
and
love watching my investments right now. I'm not even worried. I'm just looking at the investments going, yeah, this is great. It's
well,
just spike, dip, spike, dip.
well, the thing is, it's actually it's not a bad thing for the market to go down again. We were overdue for a
Yeah,
real
corrections.
correction, and corrections are what allow you to dollar cost average, where you actually adjust your average cost of stock investments down so that you get more gains as a percentage
Yeah, you
over
buy the
time
dip.
because you got to buy the dip. I love how they're trying to go after all the Republican politicians now for insider trading because they're like Marjorie Taylor Greene, made so much money on that next day because she bought the dip. And I was like, did you see the tweet she put out at like 9 a.m. saying buy the dip? It's not insider trading if she's telling everybody I'm buying the dip.
Yeah,
You
just
should
like
be
Trump
buying the dip
saying,
too.
this would be a great time to be buying
Yeah.
on Truth
That's not
Social. And they're like, he's manipulating the markets. No, it's just common sense of what was going to happen. The market is going to react to what's going on politically because the market doesn't like change. But people
Um,
also have to remember the market is not our economy. Our that's what's been so annoying about this is everybody acting like the market is our actual economy. The market did great under Biden while we all suffered. Do not worry about the market. It's not going to affect 50% of the country.
yeah, I think. Oh,
Jeremiah
Jeremiah,
Embry for $5. Are medications like Adderall and others affected by the tariffs?
possibly. And here's why: a lot of that stuff is manufactured outside of the United States, especially out of European pharmaceutical companies, with a lot of materials sourced from China. But from what I've seen in the news on the background, the European pharmaceutical companies told the European Union they needed to make a deal with Trump ASAP or they're moving their manufacturing to the United States. We are the biggest customer who pays. This is, everybody complains about how
We
much we
are
pay.
consumers.
They complain about how much we pay for pharmaceuticals, but at the same time, it means that when we do something like this, the European pharmaceutical companies will move their manufacturing here because this is where they can make money.
Yeah,
So they're going to do that. Now, like what Brahma was saying with the market, the reason the market was taking such a hit is so many of our American quote unquote companies, and I said American is the quote unquote thing, are so intertwined with these foreign countries. Their manufacturing, their employment, all these things are overseas. So they are, yeah, when you see them taking giant hits, it's not necessarily going to impact Main Street in the United States because, like, say Hasbro, for instance, right? Hasbro got hammered because they make between China and Vietnam, I think it's 80 to 85% of their toy and game manufacturing is
yeah.
in those two countries with big
You know,
tariffs.
all the cheap crap that Americans consume.
Yeah, so they're getting hammered. And so if Hasbro stock goes down and they have problems, you're like, "Oh no, that's terrible for American employees." Is it though? Because they don't have anybody on the line anymore. Those jobs went away 25, 30 years ago. Now if Hasbro wants to bring back manufacturing to the US, they could not have to pay a tariff. And everyone's like, I'm sick and
Well,
tired of
then
people
people in the
talking about it.
U.S. get employed, and they get
Yeah, and
employed at a good wage because nobody's going to take the job if they're not paying a good
yep.
wage. And that's how you build the GDP.
Yeah. Now, the main thing with the pharmaceuticals and the reason that we've had um, shortages, I think, is because China. This is a speculative statement, purely opinion based on my reading of like news and kind of putting things together. Is using their pharmaceutical base manufacturing to to create base products that can become medications. They're pumping out fentanyl in such high quantity. That is what they're using their pharmaceutical industrial base to make in large numbers. And I would think the places that would normally be making the chemical components for Adderall would also be the places where you would make the chemical components for fentanyl. And if you'd rather be making fentanyl to destroy the West through drug addiction, that's what you're going to invest in. And then you're not making as much for Adderall. And that's why we have a shortage. Just
Shortage of
saying,
Adderall.
speculative, just as a speculative thought. That's
Well, that and doctors throwing anybody and everybody that they can onto Adderall at all times. But then, yes, the production side not producing enough of it to meet the demand. I don't think I don't think half the people that are on Adderall actually need to be on Adderall, but I'm not a doctor, whatever. I think it's overprescribed.
yeah. There's definitely people who really need it.
Yes, we know a few.
Yeah, but there's a absolute just over prescription. Anytime a kid, we've talked about it, anytime, especially boys act like
Specifically,
boys
boys act like boys
in
in school
elementary and
immediately.
middle school. Yeah,
Yeah, it's part of the whole toxic masculinity thing. Boys aren't allowed to be boys. So you drug them to keep them from actually acting out in the way that boys act out.
yep.
So what else do we
It's
have going on this week?
all right. So
The
we
Save
let's
Act. You want to
the
hit on
Save
that?
Act. Yeah. So the Save Act passed in the
Passed in the
House, and
House with
it's going
4
to
votes
this.
from Democrats.
It's going to go to the Senate where it will die, but it.
There's a lot of traffic this morning. There.
The Save Act, I suppose they may be able to tie. I mean, it's an interesting thing. In theory, I guess you could try to attach it to a reconciliation bill.
Yeah.
In that, if you make the Save Act linked to government funding for X, Y, or Z, you could, in theory, make it a budget related matter. But I don't see the Senate, like, unfortunately, moving on it. It's going to get.
I don't think it'll pass the Senate either. Well,
They
we should
just.
probably describe what the Save Act is. So the
Yeah.
Save Act is basically you have to have an ID to vote.
Yep.
And the Democrats are all going completely insane saying, well, married women will no longer be allowed to vote because they've changed their name. So it's not the same as what's on the birth certificate and their ID. So you're automatically cutting out any married woman. And it's like,
Except.
are you guys completely insane? I mean, at what point?
Yeah.
At what point did getting married cost you your citizenship?
Well, here's the thing that people leave out is when you go, if you have a marriage license, which you should have if you get married, you can go to Social Security, and that's where women can go and have their name updated based on a marriage certificate. And that's fine. This isn't something where it's going to keep you from, you're going to have records. When my wife got her real ID, because we got ours a couple of years ago, she provided paperwork to the Department of Motor Vehicles here in Virginia, where guess what? It had a birth certificate with a different name, the maiden name. And then it had the records of the Social Security card showing the name change. And it was fun. No one batted an eyelash, and she got a real ID. It was super easy.
Right. It's not
Yeah.
that hard.
Yeah.
But Democrats are now lumping all women who are married in with the same things that they are saying about black people and Mexicans. You know, it's impossible for them to get an ID. There's no way you could do a name change. You cannot demand that a citizen has a piece of ID in order to vote because it's just too hard to do it. Most people don't know how to use computers. So apparently, along with everybody else that they think are too dumb to do anything, women are now in that category as well if they've gotten married.
I guess in theory, a common law marriage would have an issue, but if you're common law,
You
you're
don't
generally
change your
not
name
changing your
common law.
name. Yeah, so there. I mean, I don't see any major
This
like
whole
they
this
keep
whole
adding
point
this
of
thing.
attack is completely retarded. I mean, I don't know who thinks these things up and then spreads it amongst all the Democrats and says, this is our plan of attack on this one. Women will not be able to vote because they're married. It's just fundamentally retarded. And anybody who believes that, I'm sorry, everything that the Democrats do to you, you deserve it.
Well, what's interesting, if you want to, in your home state, Colorado just passed, and Jared Polis, the governor, signed massive gun control legislation. Guns and the right to bear arms is protected by a specific amendment of the Constitution. The reason you are not allowed, according to Democrats, to infringe, quote unquote, on the right to vote is because of the Constitution and constitutional rights, specifically the Due Process Clause post the Civil War. And yet, the same people who will tell you it is a complete infringement and unconstitutional to ask someone to show an ID when they vote will tell you it's completely okay in the Second Amendment case, where the Second Amendment specifically states the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. That it's completely okay in Colorado's case to require someone goes to the local sheriff or police department to be fingerprinted and have to voir dire with the sheriff or police officers to prove that they have the knowledge to operate a firearm, quote unquote, responsibly, and probably
After also being forced to take a
class
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you go through all these steps to be able to just get a firearm, they tell you, oh no, that's perfectly fine. That's super constitutional. So
So in
when
my
they
county, of course our sheriff, I mean, we're very, very red. So our sheriff would be just like, fine, whatever. But in certain other counties, it's going to be almost impossible to get a gun. And so just to expand on what that gun control law is, any gun, it bans the sale of firearms, any gun that has a detachable magazine. So basically anything outside of a revolver is now banned for sale unless your sheriff specifically signs off on you being allowed to buy a gun. Completely unconstitutional. There was a large petition to have Polis not sign it, but of course he did because Polis is about as leftist as you get. So, once again, Colorado is leading the way in stupidity.
Now, I do have high hopes that the Supreme Court is currently sitting on a case, Snopes versus Maryland, which is about the assault weapons ban that Maryland passed.
Yeah,
And they keep conferencing it, but not officially denying certiorari or putting it on the Supreme Court calendar. What that usually means is that they're going to be putting it into next year's plan starting like October of this, I guess, well, this year,
yeah.
2025, which is the
Next
next Supreme
session.
Court session. Or they've made an actual, or they've already made a decision. They're not going to even need to hear the case. Enough justices said, we're good. We've got a per curiam, opinion, but they don't want to release it yet. And based on the makeup of the court and the previous decisions with Bruin, my feeling is they're going to basically overturn all assault weapons bans, specifically with AR-15s, since it's just such. Bruin created and there's something called in common use is one of the tests. Like if a firearm is in common use by the people of the United States, it can't be banned. It can't be regulated that way.
Right.
It's no reasonable person could argue that the AR-15 is not in common use within the United States.
It's about the most common gun we've got.
And when they overturn that, it's gonna be interesting to see what the next vector of attacks to try to ban things are. Which is why I think the Colorado case is them anticipating the assault weapon ban. Because if you read, technically they didn't ban the weapons.
They're
They
banning
just said
detachable magazines.
no, they're not. It's not the magazines. What they're banning is unvetted people. They're saying it's a vetting process. It's a licensure process, right? It's not the weapons can be sold to anyone who qualifies. They just can't be
Sure.
sold to
We just
anyone who
get to
doesn't.
decide who qualifies.
That's going to be, and that'll be the next vector of attack. And it'll unless and until the Supreme Court provides direct clarity on that issue, they're going to keep getting these cases. It's
Yeah.
pretty. It's a matter. I mean, the 2A legal community is very up on these things and sees for what they are. So this is a state licensure method to try to keep people from getting guns. That's why there
Well,
was
it'll
an
also
issue.
tell the government exactly who has or who is getting guns because, I mean, yes, they already know, but it's just another way to get people on a list. If you have to take the course, if you have to go meet with your sheriff or the sheriff's office, then they know exactly who is trying to purchase a gun.
By the way,
It's all a mess.
it signals me that Jared Polis is 100% positioning himself for 2028.
Yes, because that's what we need. Another dude with the first gentleman running for president.
He's going to.
I mean, it is wide open for the Democrat side. I mean, you've got Gavin Newsom moving more towards the middle. You've got Jared Polis trying to throw his hat in the ring. Cory Booker obviously going to try to run based on his actions in the Senate that we just discussed. But I mean, you could have a field of 17 or 18 like we did when Trump originally ran in the Republican field, where it's just everybody is going to jump into this race because there is nobody leading the Democrat Party right now. Kamala Harris poked her head out again this week and proved that she's an idiot once more.
Yeah, Kamala is so done. I mean, her best, she might have a shot at getting the governor of California just because people will want to stick it to Trump.
And because
But
is it going to be a vacated office?
yeah,
Is Newsom termed out?
Newsom is term limited out.
Okay. I
We got
I do
Eric
love
saying
that they
Newsom and
are.
AOC. That would be a wonder combination.
Yeah, I love that they just keep leaning further and further left, proving that they still have no idea what's actually going on in this country.
In the end, honestly, the 28 election is going to be completely determined by how good Trump can get the economic turnaround done within the time he's got.
And a lot of that is going to be with
And that's the
reconciliation
and that's
starting
the
and the tariffs.
so yeah, so we talked about the three legs of the stool for his economic plan. He's put in the tariffs to try to, specifically create the stick to get manufacturing and business away from China to decouple. He's creating an opportunity. He's creating the next leg, which is we're eliminating the illegal population and migrant population within the United States so that jobs that are created here have to be filled with Americans. The
And those
third leg,
Americans are coming from the public sector where Doge is just cutting people left and right.
yeah, and
So
the third
public
leg of the
public
stool,
workers will have to go into the private sector at some point
yeah,
because there's not going to be government jobs for them.
yeah, and the third leg of the stool is the economic tax situation that he's going to create. Allegedly, one of the things Trump wants to do is he wants to eliminate capital gains or reduce it down to like the minimal level. Keep the tax cuts in place for everybody else so that you're promoting an economic environment, and even reduce the corporate rate lower so that the United States can be the most competitive zone for your corporation to be located. If you do all that and you eliminate some of the, red tape around building manufacturing here, with those other two legs, you will have created the recipe for people to have a massive economic boom. Now, the question is, and so far, I'm very thankful that seems like Speaker Mike Johnson has managed to wrangle the cats and get these people in the House to realize we're all in the same team here, and we need to drop the W's. We need to create we need to get the wins on the board while we've got the time.
All of these pieces have to be working together for the economic plan to actually work.
Yep. And it
So you
seems like
can't do two parts without Congress giving you the third part.
yeah, and it seems like Thune is doing his part in the Senate. I still think of him as a McConnell guy, but I think Thune knows to get his reputation to be able to be the majority leader for the next 30 years in, he needs
You
to
better play ball with
deliver
Trump.
right now.
Yeah. I am
Because
interested in the idea of just cutting federal income tax to everybody under 150,000. That one's an interesting one. I mean, that's ultimately if you did keep the tariffs in place, which I honestly don't think the tariffs are going to stay in place very long. I think you've already got most of the countries have come to the table to negotiate. And ultimately what Trump is doing is he slaps the tariffs on everybody and everybody is going to do a different deal with him. I mean, he's going to look at each individual case and be like, well, this is what we want from you. Whether it's, you know, getting rid of tariffs altogether in between them and us. So them removing their tariffs on us, or, different things like you don't do business with China
well, that's the
to
thing that
bypass the tariffs.
yeah. So
And
there's country of origin
China's
laws.
destroying its economy right now by trying to fight back against Trump. They
China
will go under without, us buying 60% of their crap.
well, China. All right, China's plan is to try to inflict maximum harm in the short term to get the U.S. to fold, because China is not built for a long-term economic fight against the U.S. if the U.S. is actually going to fight it.
And everything that they produce in China is not really meant for their
No,
domestic consumption.
if
It's
they
meant
flood,
for us.
China has an overproduction issue where their manufacturing, in order to keep people employed, has to run like 24 hours a day, three shifts, 3 8-hour shifts. those factories are being idled now. There's all sorts, like even as much as the CCP like keeps things on lockdown, we're in too much of a modern age where we're seeing these people getting laid off and getting their factories shut down and people talking about it.
Yeah,
But
and that's a good way to get Xi pushed out of office, because the second they start losing all their jobs and nobody's able to work in a communist, dictatorship, that's when the people will actually start
well,
screaming and making noise.
China also has a giant demographic problem that it gets talked about a little bit, but their one child policy worked too well. And
Yeah,
part of the
they
reason
didn't
it worked too
replace.
well is because, and this is how horrible the communist Chinese regime was, because they were only allowing people to have one child. People in
You
our
had
chat and
males.
audience would know they promptly, women and husbands and wives would murder their, not just get abortions, but if they didn't know and they had a baby, they would have the baby killed and pretend they didn't have a child so that they could get a boy, because boys were worth more in the Chinese culture than women.
So now there's not enough women to
So they're
reproduce
yeah,
with,
so
and there's a whole bunch of men that basically just go into the military service because there's nothing else for them because there's too many men.
now China has a large, and this is where people start conflating things. China has the largest by manpower military in the world, but
Largest standing
China,
army, but
yeah,
they don't have the technology to
well, it's
still
not
be a threat, really.
I mean, well, at a certain point, technology is meaningless if you can get the waves of people to just keep crashing. Korea was a good example. Like the Korean War, the United States had the technological military advantage in terms of air power, ground forces, etc. But when MacArthur went in there and he continued, and we were going to take North Korea and successfully, China just sent the waves and waves of soldiers and it pushed us back. Eventually, to the point where we got the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, and we set up a partition creating North Korea and South Korea.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's ultimately what Russia was doing, or the USSR was doing against Germany in World War II. They just threw people into the grinding mill, and
yeah. So you
millions
if you
died.
now the problem with that philosophy is you need to make sure people are committed to following through with it. I mean, it's how
Or you
Grant
have to
one.
have the gun pointed at them, telling them you
Yeah.
either do it or we kill you.
I
I
mean,
mean, that's where the communist regime comes in.
it's the reason Ulysses Grant won the Civil War in the United States. It wasn't because he was a more tactically brilliant general. It's that he didn't give up on battles. He knew the advantage the North had was in manpower and resources, and that if he sent his guys into the meat grinder, he would basically through attrition break the entire Confederate army because they couldn't replace people. There's a really
And his
powerful
soldiers
scene.
were committed to it.
Yeah, there's a powerful scene in the Gangs of New York where you see a boat coming from Ireland with Irish immigrants. They immediately get off the boat and they get routed to sign up for the Union Army,
Yeah.
and they get immediately put on another boat to go down to like the mid Atlantic to get it, to start fighting in the
To get
Civil
off the
War.
boat where the front lines are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were constantly replacing people, and the South couldn't. In the Chinese case, if we ever got into it, God forbid, because it would not be good for anybody, if we got into a ground war, we have all these advantages. We have the air power, we have the naval, all that kind of technological advantage. Provided the military age men in China are genuinely committed and just wave onto wherever we're trying to fight, we wouldn't be able to stop them. Taiwan, for instance. If China was really committed to just continually sending waves and waves and waves of troops to Taiwan, there's no way to defend that island. They're not from that kind of onslaught.
But that's also where this economic policy is protecting Taiwan, if you think about it.
Yep.
Because at the moment Trump is turning the rest of the world against China. All the people on the left were spouting and screaming about on the news over the past few weeks about the tariffs is you're just going to push the rest of the countries in the world into China's corner. And the exact opposite has happened. Everybody
Well,
has come to us
here's
and run
here.
away from China as China tries to defy Trump, which gives them bad blood with the rest of the. I mean, everybody's already on bad terms with China after the COVID thing, right? But he's pushing it to China is more on their own, which gives them it's less likely that they will try to go after Taiwan while they're so hated on the global political scale.
Which by the way is 100% why we need to just suck it up and get Zelensky to quit his bitching and make the deal with Russia, because right now the main ally, like, Russia can supply oil to China and petrochemical and things like that that they'll need for to fuel their machine. But if we get on, like, Putin doesn't necessarily like Xi. China and Russia they share a giant border. They don't like each other.
They
They're
don't
two
like each
power,
other,
you know,
but economically, they're kind
they
of
they're
dealing with
forced.
each other.
We forced them into it. And Biden was the one who did it with when the Ukraine stuff happened. I mean, we don't need to relitigate why they forced BRICS into basically speed running, trying to replace the US dollar.
Right.
But if we make this deal to end the war in Ukraine, realizing that those territories in the east that Putin has are never going back to Ukraine. They're never, ever, ever, ever getting it back. To quote Taylor Swift, you're never, ever going to get them back.
Don't you dare do that on my channel.
So,
This is a no Taylor Swift channel through and
but
through.
it just needs to be rationally realized. Marco Rubio has kind of commented sort of that way. And it's getting Zelensky and specifically Europe to buy in and understand that you might be able to create a DMZ, a demilitarized zone between the Donbass and like Eastern Ukraine, where Putin has taken the territory, and the rest of Ukraine. But they're never getting that territory back. Putin believes that is Russian. Those people are Russian. That territory is historically Russian. It belongs to Russia. And when someone, and I mean, go back to his interview with Tucker, where he spent 2 hours basically sounding like me, going back like 1,000 years to go over the history that, like, if you want to understand it,
Yeah.
we got to go back to the beginning.
Historically, these have been Russian
Historically.
people.
Exactly. So he's not giving up on them because you got to read, the kind of the
Eric, I will
philosophy.
time you out in a matter of seconds. Don't even start.
So you understand Putin's committed, but here's the thing: I think Putin genuinely likes Trump. Putin likes the idea of a strong America. He
Putin
like
believes in nationalism. He believes in protecting your own nation's borders and interests.
Here's what Putin also knows: if we have a strong America actually working for America, it helps Russia because it screws over Europe. Europe functions on our largesse, right? They exist because we cover their defense, we give them trade, we give them all this stuff, but Europe is not aligned with the values of most Americans. And this is going to sound crazy to say, but Putin is kind of okay with traditional American values, Judeo-Christian values. He's okay with it. He's
He doesn't
good.
like what America is exporting right now with the
Yes.
trans movement and the gay movement and all of that crap. But he does. Russia has traditionally had values that align more with Judeo Christian
Yeah.
beliefs than a lot of other countries as a nationalist thing. I mean, obviously not during the USSR, but I think a lot of the Russian people would be very much in line with a lot of the American citizens in their everyday beliefs. A lot more than, say, any Islamic country.
Yep. And I think Putin also rightly views that a lot of those values are being exported by the New World Order, World Economic
The
Forum types,
globalists. Mm-hmm.
globalists, more than they are the American people, and that we are being victimized by the same thing as a country. So Putin wants a bipolar nationalist setup between the US and Russia. The reason Putin is making deals with China is because Biden forced him into it. That was the place where he could get what he needed to, for the Soviet people, or Soviet Russian people.
The
The slip of the
Soviet
tongue,
people.
slip
Yeah.
of the tongue.
And
But
this is
he
not to
won't.
say Putin is a good guy.
No, but
it is to say this is what his political beliefs seem to be: a strong
here's
Russia.
but here's the other thing we need to understand: no one gets to be the head executive of a large nation being a good guy. You've got to. I mean, I
And he is
love
ex KGB. I mean,
but
there's a lot bad about Putin, but there's a
there's a
lot politically that makes sense about
but
Putin.
he's not unreadable. All you have to
Right.
realize is that Putin is doing things to create stronger Russia. If you it's a realist point of view. If you know that Putin's positions are going to always be aligned towards creating the best outcome for Russia, then he's not made any choice that isn't completely rational for that mindset.
Including Ukraine, because if Biden and Kamala Harris hadn't been pushing to get them into NATO, this probably never happens.
No,
That was the red line. They
Putin
crossed
had
it.
said it for 26 goddamn years when Putin was in charge. Prior to that, it was previous Russian presidents,
Medvedev.
and well, I'm talking back when Putin first came on the scene in the late 90s.
Yeah.
In terms, I mean, it's not like Putin was new; he was obviously there, but became the president of Russia in that era. Prior to that, I believe it was it still Yeltsin? Did Putin succeed Yeltsin, or
There
was
was
there an in
Yeltsin,
between?
there was Medvedev,
No,
there's
Medvedev
been a
was
few.
so Medvedev was actually after Putin had a term limit.
Mm-hmm.
So Medvedev became president and Putin became like the premier, and then they changed the Russian constitution so he could come back, and then he became president
Right.
again.
And Medvedev was the one that Obama met with and said,
Yeah,
I'll have a
I'll
lot more
have more
flexibility after the
after the
election.
election. Yeah. So, but again, if as long as you view things through the rational lens of he is making decisions to get the best outcome for Russia, everything makes sense. Now he does also murder people, allegedly. With again, he's you
Now
can,
Chad starts a hedging. He does also have people killed.
but at the same time, would it be something that we could say truthfully on a polygraph that we didn't think the United States government had people killed? And I would probably say no. I couldn't truthfully answer that. I don't think the United States
Or
government had
former
people killed.
presidents that are running for the presidency attempted to be
Yeah.
killed or attempted to be put in prison.
I think you just need to come to the rational perspective that once you get to the head of a global hegemon, meaning like the big boy on the block, decisions are being made and there are people being removed from the board all the time. And there's no perfect morality at that level of government. There's just gray areas. And that sounds bad. And that's
But it's also the
100%.
reason that nobody trusts their government.
Yeah,
I
but that's
mean,
also and this is exactly why, again, getting back to some of the other conversations we've had, the reason you want a Christian or God-fearing people that have some kind of inherent morality
moral
within them
compass,
is
guardrails on
is
society.
understanding that anybody in a position of high-level government power, and this goes back to monarchies, dictatorships, whatever, is going to have the ability to remove people, to take people off the board, do all sorts of bad things. And sometimes they're going to do things that you don't agree with, and sometimes they're going to cross lines, and that's where you have to get revolutions and do other things. But if you put someone in there who at least has some core moral values, you don't eliminate, but you at least reduce the risk of and make it a little like where someone has to take a few more mental gymnastic steps to be able to do what they're going to do. Otherwise, like Eric pointed out, when Obama was gleefully had his kill list and was drone striking people, including American citizens and their sons, with no due
Mm-hmm.
process, we're going up in batshit arms about like a Tren de Agua person or an MS-13 person being deported to El Salvador to go to prison because they had quote unquote no due process. But
And
when
let's let's go into that one just a little bit. So the guy that they're trying to bring back, the only reason is not because he wasn't affiliated with the gang. It's because he was not sent to the correct country when he was deported.
technically in the 2019 deportation order, which went through the Immigration Administrative Court law judge and an appeals process for that immigration uh, judge, he was found to be a member of MS-13. He was found to be a threat to the community. He was found to be in the country illegally, and they determined he should be deported immediately. He had an order of deportation. The only thing that happened was that he argued that there were gangs in El Salvador that wanted to kill him. So if he got sent to El Salvador, because of this criminal element there, he had a high risk of bad things happening to him. So he asked, and the government at the time, because we hadn't rooted, we still have a lot of burrowed people, and this is the way they used to just do things,
The
said,
swamp.
fine, fine. We'll put in a caveat that when we deport you, we just won't send you to El Salvador. And that was all signed off on. So that was the paperwork.
Right. So ultimately, we just sent him to the wrong country, getting him out of here. He still
Now,
does not belong here.
well, here's the question, though. This is the interesting thing. Since the time that deportation order was done, it's a new regime in El Salvador, and he has famously, the new president of El Salvador, cleaned up the criminal element of El Salvador, sending him to that massive prison complex that we're now using.
Mm-hmm.
And the risk at the time that was present at the time may not be present there, and that just that little agreement isn't necessarily permanent and doesn't bind the United States to only not doing that. This guy is an El Salvadorian citizen. He's not a US citizen. He got sent back to El Salvador. He is rightfully under the jurisdiction of his home country at this point, which is why the most recent. All right, so just to go over the timeline of events this week, the Supreme Court did a ruling that said to the Trump administration, yeah, we think this guy probably, should have probably had a couple more pieces of process, whatever. And it looks like you acknowledge that he was sent to El Salvador in error, and so we're going to rule against you and support the district court. That's what got reported. What people lost in translation was when they sent what they also sent back to the district court, because the district court had told the Trump administration, you need to bring this man back to the United States. The Supreme Court basically told the district court, we can't make the president do that. You can politely ask the president to facilitate that. So that's where the language changed. The district court, when it got sent back, changed their ruling, and the district court judge said the United States government executive branch has to do everything they can to facilitate, if possible, the return. That was a big change, right? It went from you will bring him back to you need to facilitate, if possible, the return of this
Right.
person.
Meanwhile, the leftist news networks are Trump deported some innocent dad who didn't do anything wrong.
No
Not the
one.
case.
All right, here's the thing. He had a lawyer in 2019 who was in the position to, in the adversarial court system, challenge any of the evidence presented, and they did not. And the administrative, judge found that he was in fact a member of MS-13 and a danger to the community in 2019. Then it
And he
went to
did enter the
appeals.
country illegally.
Then it went to the appeals court. He came into the country illegal like in 2009. So what's interesting is he was in the country since 2009 illegally. And then by 2019, when he finally gets arrested for being part of the criminal gang known as MS-13, he suddenly says, I need an asylum claim because it's a danger. My country is a danger to me if I go back. That's what like when we talk about the reason he was going to this immigration judge and they were fighting things. It was based on fighting for asylum because he said he was going to be threatened if he went back to El Salvador. That's how we got to that point where they made the like compromise. We're like, look, we know you're MS-13. All the judges have found you to be MS-13, but we'll just, yeah, we'll agree we won't send you to El Salvador. And then they promptly released him and he never got deported.
And here's my thing with it. I don't care if he was going to be in trouble if he went to El Salvador. He's not a citizen here. He is part of a gang.
Mhm.
He should be gone. I It's not our problem what happens afterwards. You broke the law. Get out. I'm completely in agreement with Gojira on that one.
Yeah, it's that I agree too. I think the Supreme Court knows that's what's going to happen because now that he's back in his native land where he is subject to the government and sovereign protection of El Salvador, he's not going to get extradited.
He's their problem now.
So the Supreme Court, and that's why people are misreading what they did, because when the Supreme Court, the headline was the Supreme Court agreed that the Trump administration made a mistake, but they didn't get to the part where what they were really saying was that that's all, yeah, whatever, it's happened, but the district court can't force the Trump administration to bring this guy back. And so
Right.
and so that's why in the next, after the Supreme Court, after the district judge redid their filing, the Trump administration made their required filing with the district court where they acknowledged he's still alive, he's fine, he's in this prison. And that's what they said. And like his lawyers and the ACLU are going nuts because they want discovery, they want all this stuff, and the Trump administration is basically saying F off, we don't actually need to deal with this.
I mean,
So
I'm sure Christy Nome got all dressed up and went and met with him personally.
I know. Remember when she first did that, and I pointed that out to you. I was like, I don't know if I like Ice Barbie, like going out there. I mean, it's fine. I get the optics of why she wants to be seen, like actually not being Mayorkas, and that like her department is going out and doing stuff. I do think it's funny that she always has her hair in a blowout, like completely done with makeup, like
Yeah.
it's a funny thing. Like,
She's still in her pageant days.
yeah, she's doing her best. I mean, I give Christy Nome credit for a woman of her age. She looks fantastic. Good
And
for
we know
her.
she does know how to use a gun because she's used it on her dog.
I know. I mean, if clearly she should be more out with ATF raids. That's a joke for everybody. If you know, you know. So,
I mean, ultimately, though, she needs to actually just be doing her job and not pretending to be an ICE officer constantly.
I wouldn't even
It's
mind it
getting
if she was
old.
like if she wants to keep going out on the raids and just like because she brings press with her. That's fine, but she doesn't need to dress up in the tactical gear. And I mean, or if you do it, you don't need to be running around with an AR-15 like on a sling like you're breaching a door. If it got to the point where the
And then
Secretary of
stating, I don't
Homeland,
even know who we're going after today. I think it's a child sex trafficker, but I'm not sure. I mean,
well,
that
to be
makes you sound
fair,
like an absolute idiot if you're pretending to go on these ICE raids or going on these ICE raids and not knowing who you're going after when you're the head of DHS.
yeah, she should
It's
be.
a bad look.
I mean, the way to scale that is like, look, when we go out on these raids, I believe we're here because there's a child sex trafficker or a child whatever who's on this. But these raids, we end up finding other people. That's the most. That's what you change the question, right? I don't want to say. You watch a you watch a movie like Zootopia, which I had to watch because my kid was real young when that came out and he loved it. And the Fox character was like, he was talking to the bunny about how to do a press conference because she was like, how do I do a press? He's like, it's easy. Just answer the question
I
you
don't know
want
what to
to.
do with my hands.
No, no, but he said like, she's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, when they ask you a question, just repeat the question, say it's a good question, and give whatever answer you want to whatever you want to talk about. And
Yeah.
like, so like, why are you
You
out
just
today?
shift.
Yeah, and the reporter goes, why are you out today? Who are you after? That's a good question. We are out here after people because the Biden administration let people in here for 4 years and never did anything to do, and just go out on your talking points. Tom Homan is great on that. He just answers,
Yeah.
whatever. she needs a little more, polish on that. I don't think this is going to be the highest level Kristi Noem ever gets. Good for her. You know, if she ever tried to run for a presidential office, the Corey Ludnowski stuff would destroy her campaign anyway. So we don't need to worry about it. She's she brings the cameras.
And,
Good. I like
and
the idea that we see that.
I don't hate Gnome. I am just tired of the, like you're saying, her being Ice Barbie.
Yeah, and I saw that. I told you that. I think I remember when we were doing the bullpen, like right after she got appointed and started doing that. I was like, I think this is going to end bad if she keeps doing it. She needs to probably scale back the Ice Barbie look, or at least be just general professional.
And I
Don't
think
look.
Trump has told all the people that he's put in, I want you visible. I want everybody to see what we're doing. But I don't know that this is the way to go with her in that position.
I mean, I think she would get from the mainstream media. She'd get problems no matter what look she went with.
Likely.
If she was out there like I would, maybe not the tactical vest, but just like an DHS jacket, which she probably would be wearing, and the DHS hat with her hair in a ponytail, she'd probably still get flack because people are like, "Why is the Homeland Security, secretary out there? Shouldn't she have other better things to do?" I don't, I do like that she's out there because it does bring attention to these raids happening. We need to, because all of this stuff does lead to the stories we start seeing about people self-deporting. We're getting
Right.
more and more
Something
of
like
that.
5,000 in the last week after Trump said you should
Yeah.
start self deporting. 5,000 people immediately leave the country.
Oh, and that's another. Trump militarized the border,
Yeah.
taking the Roosevelt line from the 1930s, and he's basically given that entire 60-foot wide. It goes from basically California to the tip of Texas because Texas didn't sign off on it when Roosevelt did this in the 30s, and he's given that to the military. So that 60-foot strip along the entire southern border now has been effectively given to the US military as military property, meaning that any
Mm-hmm.
person who comes illegally and steps foot into that zone has now illegally entered what the same as going into a military base without permission. You can
Right.
immediately get detained by military and held, and then you don't have to, at that point you're not going to a local processing. You're being held into the federal system and you immediately get kicked out. It's going to be, and plus by doing that,
Effective.
you can use he doesn't even have to, last term he had to go through the trouble and it ended up being approved, but he had to go through the trouble of moving military budget money over to Homeland Security for fence building.
Right.
By making this all military property, they can use military money to do it. Now, this ties into the fact that it just came out that the Hegseth said they want a $1 trillion military budget. They want to go from last year's 800 million to move it up to an even trillion. And
You mean billion to trillion?
800 billion to 1 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and people are like, well, I thought we were cutting. Why are we doing that? And I think the smart thing is that the reason that's happening is Trump knows when he gets something under the military system, he has basically complete carte blanche as the commander in chief to execute things. And it takes a lot less red tape within the
Yeah.
federal government. So
You
he's
know
going
what's
to
more effective than a fence? A military fence.
a military fence. So he's going to, I think the reason that budget number went up when we're trying to be cutting things is Trump's got plans to do a lot of stuff that would have been under other departments using the military budget, specifically immigration and security along the border. So I would keep an eye out for that, for people who watch the bullpen, to be a little bit ahead of the curve on what's probably coming and what they're going to be using that for. Because if you start connecting the dots from A to B to C, you can start seeing like Hegseth says they want more money for the military budget. By the end of the same week, the Trump has signed the executive order to militarize this, basically give that military zone over on the southern border to become quote unquote military property, where they can do whatever kind of fencing or anti personnel. Yeah. I mean, if you think the cartels, if they talk about digging tunnels, Customs and Border Patrol has some cool shit, but not like what the military has to
Right.
eliminate
To take
tunnels
care of
and
tunnels.
take care of things. So, and once that's military property, you better believe the rules of engagement are very different with Customs and Border Patrol finding someone versus, hey, you are now tunneling into a military base. Guess what happens to you on site? Pop, pop. Like it's the
And then we take care of the tunnel.
Yep. So there's stuff like that that is in process that you can see coming if you pay attention to these little tea leaves.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like what we were saying about the tariffs last week. And if you're not paying attention to the mainstream media and actually looking at what's going on and what the next steps are, then it's pretty clear where we're going.
Oh, I see a
Culture
culture in the
Casino
chat.
with
Yeah.
Las Vegas, baby. Yep. Couple more days. I'll be there
Eric
Wednesday.
Myers. I like Eric. We can put a Burger King anywhere in 24 hours. I'm pretty sure we can dig some cool tunnels. uh, it's it's going to be fun stuff in terms of what we're going to see. I think there's people saying that there's no rhyme or reason to this are not tracking, like with the tariffs, when they're like Trump's all over the place, he's being crazy. He scared the hell out of the rest of the world, then rolled it back,
Turn them
except
against
on
China.
then on rolled it back except on China, which is his prime target, and then now the rest of the world, because of him staying fierce on China, is super scared of China dumping the materials cheap into the, like the European Union is completely scared of China dumping, and we're talking like steel, aluminum, raw goods into Europe at rock bottom prices because they can't put it to the United States. And I'm sorry, but you got to understand, like a lot of these materials, there's other places in the world that just don't have need for it or use it the way industrialized Western nations do.
Right.
So and they can't do it in Canada because Canada is already being propped up by Chinese stuff, and Trump's already after them for what's called country of origin, where things are coming in from China and they repackage it. This is also what's happened in Vietnam, and it was brought up by
Vietnam.
Lutnick and
Yep.
Scott Bessent, which is
Yep.
Vietnam is a problem because they become a pass-through entity for China where it ships to
To
Vietnam.
try to avoid the tariffs.
Yeah, they repackage things and kind of do slight assembly in Vietnam and then ship it out so that it's a Vietnamese good. So Trump is bringing back country of origin, where all you have to source all the things to your home country to be able to put that it's made in Vietnam and avoid tariffs. Like if you have to acknowledge that this shit's coming from China, guess what? It doesn't get in anymore without tariffs. So when that
Yeah.
stuff
No
goes to
more made in
Mexico,
China
yeah,
via Vietnam or
yeah.
whatever other
Or
country.
Canada and Mexico. China does a lot of that with both those places. China, like I said, I think last week, spent $5 billion building an electronic vehicle assembly plant in Mexico so that when they send stuff to Mexico, it could be assembled in Mexico and then enter the US via the US Mexico Canada trade, the USMCA,
Yeah. The VIN
US
number's
Mexico
going to
Canada
decode as
as
it was
Mexico.
built and manufactured in
Yeah.
Mexico instead
But
of
Trump's
China.
locked that down. These people are not stupid. He brought in Wolverines, man, who track that stuff, who know about these things. Like light high.
Which is why the blanket tariffs. I mean,
Yep,
because you're hitting every country that they might be dealing with, as well as getting things out of those countries. He's going to extract everything he can while also trying to level the playing field and reset the global economy.
exactly. And I was posting on X about to really scale up any factory manufacturing in the United States is 18 to 24 months with dogged commitment to do so. And
Right.
so Trump knows that, so he's buying time and he wants to make what are and as Scott Bessent said this, bespoke, individualized trade agreements that are bilateral. We are going to have an agreement with Japan. We are going to have an agreement with Korea, South Korea. We're
The
going to have
EU.
we're going to have an agreement with, well, the EU, yeah, is technically one entity, unfortunately, but we're going to have an agreement with the UK, and each one of these agreements will have its own rules and processing, because the what Trump knows is that getting into these massive, like the reason he hated what was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was going to be like Korea, Japan, Australia, and all these other countries. Technically, it didn't have China in it, but the way the rules were for we just talked about this country of origin thing, China would have been able to abuse the shit out of that deal
They
to
could bypass
basically
everything.
to
Yeah.
go basically route right through, like specifically Australia, for people who don't understand why tariffs are on Australia. Australia is a clearinghouse for Chinese goods. Things go into Australia, they get repackaged and then sent out of Australia. Australia is a dumping ground for Chinese steel. Australia is not a welcome territory for American goods, so Australia gets tariffs. It's not simple. Australia can come to the United States and make a bilateral trade agreement with the United States, where the United States can have specific terms to say any Australian quote unquote good has to actually be made in Australia 100%. I think under last administration, Trump was always gearing for about 85%. It had to be 85% manufactured in that country to be considered country of origin, which is, I
Manufactured
guess,
there.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fair, because sometimes there's raw materials you might need to import from somewhere else just because you don't have it in
Well,
your country.
even our auto industry, yeah, you you may build the car here, but there are pieces that are made outside of the U.S.
And a good example would be like chip manufacturing. We still don't have a lot of that in the US. Modern automobiles have a lot of computer chips, but what do you know, that when you factor in all that electronic equipment, it's probably about 15% of the car versus the steel you can make in the United States, the aluminum, the plastics,
Which we've
whatever.
also had movement on because Taiwan said that they will invest in American chip manufacturing over the next few years. They're going to build a gigantic plant here in the US to create the same chips that we're importing from Taiwan. So
Yeah.
Taiwan won't be the only major source of those chips anymore.
Do you know what? So they passed what was called the CHIPS Act under Biden. It was a massive program designed to incentivize businesses to build high end computer chip manufacturing in the United States. It was specifically targeted at Taiwanese companies to get them to start building here in the US. And they had initially were very open to it. And then they all pulled back because the Biden administration under the CHIPS Act started adding shit in where 50% of your construction workers building your plant had to be women, and
And
there was
DEI.
DEI requirements and
Yes.
all this shit. And these chip companies were like, God help us. There's no construction company that builds these kinds of factories that's 50% women. Actually, we're not talking like upper board and administrative jobs. They wanted on site people putting goddamn rivets into steel being 50% women, bricklayers, all the rest. And they were like, no. So that's why, you know how many factories actually got started after the CHIPS Act? None. Because once they all looked into it and saw what the Biden administration was requiring, there was no incentive actually there, because whatever tax savings and other things were more than offset by these other requirements they were going to put in. Trump is not making them do that. He's
Right.
going to, he's actually cutting the red tape and saying, you build that. There's Hyundai is putting a goddamn steel plant in Louisiana, right in near New Orleans, so that they can go right off the boat, make steel, and send it right up to the car plants in the United States they run, because they're going to use US origin steel to make their own automobiles in the US to avoid any tariffs.
And
I
all of
know
this brings jobs back to America.
yep. My
Manufacturing jobs,
yeah,
things that we've exported out of our country this whole time. The types of jobs we've exported to everybody else, you'll have those jobs coming back to Americans.
exactly. And
And we
they're
become
gonna
more self sufficient, just like with our energy policy.
and I just obviously I'm making an assumption here, but I'm going to tell you that most of these manufacturing jobs are probably going to be going into the Rust Belt and Sun Belt because they're going to either retrofit existing factory spaces or create new ones in states that are welcoming. They're not going to be, good for California and Newsom thinking they're the biggest economy on the planet, et cetera, et cetera. None of none of these places are going to shore jobs into California because of the restrictions. Nobody's going to be building a factory in Massachusetts, in New York, or any of these states where the governors are going to be dicking them around on every little thing. The states that
And,
are going to make deals, cut red tape along with the Trump administration are going to get all these jobs.
and that's actually a good segue into one of the last topics we had for today. Doge has been a little bit quiet lately, but they did announce that they found, when looking at unemployment benefits, that three blue states are account for 80% of the fraudulent unemployment payouts that have been happening. And those would be that huge economy in California, New York, and Massachusetts. They account for 80% of the fraudulent claims of unemployment in the country. Something like, what was it, 550 million or something like that? I can't remember the actual number, but
It is ridiculous. Like, yeah, I think
yeah, number of people over 115 years old, stuff like that.
I know from experience. I worked at Geico. We did claims adjusting, and Geico was knee deep and helped find in New York, massive fraud ring, right? Where people were gaming workers' compensation, car insurance, like it was a Russian mob organized thing.
Hmm,
And they had an entire they had a whole Brahma, a whole goddamn like medical building of physical therapists where people would come in with these injuries so they could bill, generate all this income, like all this billing, because they owned like this physical therapy office. People weren't actually hurt, but
right.
they generate the
You get
bills
into
that
a
send.
fender bender and you
Yeah,
get referred to this physical therapist that
yeah.
will automatically say, oh, yeah, definitely
So
injured.
they had a law firm that they used. They had a whole physical therapy office. It was like a 3-floor building. All this stuff, and they spent like Geico participated like in 2 years. They were investigating this along with like some feds. And the day before, like the day, I think the day of the raid that they were finally going to make to go in, they went in. The physical therapy office was cleared out. Like all 3 floors, it was just empty because they had gotten word what was happening and they just pulled it.
Mm-hmm.
And not a person got arrested. And they estimated, I think it was like $750 million had been siphoned into these false claims. And
And
some of
when
that
people, yeah,
was
when
workers' comp.
people, yeah, it's workman's comp. It's a whole bunch of stuff, but and it's kind of like all the theft in different states, like California again, and people saying, well, I mean, they've got insurance, it'll pay for it. That all ends up getting passed on to everybody else because the insurance companies are not banks. I mean, when you have massive payouts of claims, the only option is to raise the premiums on everybody. So, shocking, everybody's insurance has been going up for the past decade by massive amounts. It's because of all these policies that basically say, yeah, the insurance companies will pay for it. Summer of Love. Sure, cities are on fire, but they've got insurance.
So insurance has a lag time too, because it's going to take around 12 to 15 months from when things start dropping in price for underwriting to start scaling that in. That's
Actuarial, yeah.
yeah, actuarial underwriting, all that, whatever, actuaries work in underwriting. So they're clearing out all these illegals who are causing massive amounts of accidents on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, not just the roads,
Some
they all,
Haitians.
yeah. The Trump administration is also doing something else, which is fun. Did you know that I don't know if you'd seen this story. They're going the DHS is going to truck stops and making truck drivers do English tests.
Oh yeah.
Because
No,
in the
I haven't
United
seen that
States, to be
story.
a long haul as part of your CDL, which is, with the required license to be able to do long haul trucking, you have to be completely fluent in both speaking and writing English. It's a requirement because all our road signs are in English.
Sure.
So they're pulling these drivers to the side and they're handing them a card and telling them, read this sentence out loud. And if they can't read it, and then they pull them, they make them go to the next level, which is to start writing a sentence in English. And if they can't do it, they immediately arrest them, and it's like a $1,500 immediate fine. And if the
And I
driver
would
can't,
assume a revocation of their CDL.
yes, they get their license confiscated, and they have to pay that fine immediately. And if they can't, they get brought into custody, and then they call the owner of the trucking
Trucking
company,
company.
and the owner of the trucking company has to immediately pay the fine, which is higher. It's like 10,000 for the owner of the company. And if they
That's
can't
funny.
immediately pay the fine, the entire truck gets confiscated. And they're doing this kind of stuff too. And these are all rules that were on the books. Another court case that got brought up this week, it's already on the books. If you're here in the United States as a non-citizen, you are required to have your paperwork on you at all times. For somebody who, if you ever travel to Europe or somewhere else in the, this is the equivalent of being carrying your passport, because that has your
Right.
visa stamp, which shows you are allowed to be in that country. So all people who are in the United States who are not citizens or permanent residents are supposed to have on their person at all times the paperwork giving them permission to be in the US. And the
Right.
Trump administration is enforcing this and sending notice out to even illegal people. If you're here and you have some kind of work, like something even from the Biden administration, you have to have that on you. And if you don't, you can be brought into custody. You have to produce it when asked. And if it's not valid, you can get immediately deported. And it went, obviously, like everything else, it went to court, and the judge was like, that's legal.
It's the
So
law in
yeah,
the books.
that's the law in the books. You might not like it, but Congress passed it. So yes, we're not doing anything to stop
Nice. Eric K for $1.99. Jeremy and Beardo could not be truckers then.
it.
They may speak it fluently. I don't know about the writing of it.
Yeah. So, but it's those little things, right? That's actually rules, and then we just never enforce them. But think of how simple that is to keep people. How many stories have you seen, Rama, about people who are working as truckers illegally end up causing massive accidents and death because
Right.
they run off the road, they do this, that, or the other. It's not just a Haitian, and I mean Haitians do enough damage in Ohio in trucks, like just pickup trucks.
Well, the Haitian issue was you're coming from a country, you've been brought here by the Biden administration. You're coming from a country that doesn't use insurance, doesn't understand insurance, and they're just driving around without licenses or insurance because either they don't know or they've never cared. And then you've got people just getting into wrecks left and right and leaving the scene because they don't have insurance and it's not their problem in their minds. And that's the problem with integration and assimilation. If you're not going to assimilate, I mean, it's not going to work out.
I'm also, yeah,
I would think that you could probably just post somebody at every way station and have that take care of everything
I think
as
they're
far as
scaling. I
that
think
law.
they're scaling it up. I think they want
Because you're
to.
required to stop at the way stations and then you just have that be part of the way station stuff.
Well, I think they're doing. I think they're hitting the truck stops to try to catch people who are. I think some of these illegal ones skip the way stations sometimes.
That's
But
possible.
yeah, so I think. I mean, it's fine. I think the other thing is they're waiting to scale that up to give time. Like anything else, if a lot of businesses have been doing this illegally, they
Gaming
get
the system.
they get notice that this is going to be happening, and you better start hiring American truckers who can pass these tests and avoid these fines. I think Trump doesn't want to like cripple trucking as a business. So he's slow rolling it to make sure that people see that examples are getting made, but not doing enough to like take 1,000 truckers off at a time where it would start doing
Sure.
damage.
Cripple the
Uh,
economy.
yeah, so I mean, there is a method. Trump is not just some crazy hothead doing things that are going to cripple the American economy. But at the same time, you do this, it's getting in reported in newspapers. It starts like if you're running a small trucking company, you're going to make sure that you're not. It's not in your interest anymore because of the money you might save. It's not going to be worth it. So you start making the rational business decision not to do it.
Right.
And that's going to mean that guess what? Truckers start earning a little bit more money too, because you're going to have to start paying prevailing wages to more truckers.
Right. Competitive wages. Yeah.
Yep. So it's there's a lot of stuff where I don't like the trust the plan phrase, right? But these things are
Or the
happening. They're
4D chess crap.
yeah. It's not
It's not
40
4D
chess.
chess. It's using the laws and it's actually putting things on the books and just doing it the way it should be. It's more common sense than it is 4D chess. Unfortunately, in politics, common sense is not a thing that prevails most of the time.
Yeah, and like we talked about with the Putin example, these are all things that are right in front of you. It's not 4D chess like you're haha surprise. You do this, then
Sometimes
you
it
can do
is
that.
exactly what it appears to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh my God, it looks like Trump hates China and wants to destroy them economically. Yes. Yes, that is what he's said.
That's
That's what he's,
that's the stated goal. I
what
mean,
did, I mean, how many memes have come out this week when it was like Trump runs on saying that he's going to raise tariffs for 2 years? Trump's going you're going to raise tariffs? Yes, I'm going to raise tariffs. Like November of 2024. Are you going to raise tariffs? I'm going to tariff the shit out of everybody. January 2020, and I'm going to tariff everybody. April 2025. Oh shit, he dropped tariffs. I think the market, like, who saw this
he did
coming?
what he said.
It's like, oh my God, everybody on CNBC didn't see it coming. Like, how is that
Yeah.
possible? Like,
He's
nobody
been
could have
talking about
foreseen
it for 35
this.
years.
Like, no financial expert could have foreseen this. He
Yeah,
ran
that
on it for
the clip
2
with the guy from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, talking about
Yes.
it. He was like, "No, it should be 400%. All China does is steal our intellectual property. They don't pay attention to patent laws. If you do work over there or do business over there, and they do something that negatively affects your company, it's not like you can take them to court in China. They don't care. I mean, and everybody on the panel with him is just like, I don't understand. And it's like, it's exactly what he said he was going to do. And Eric Myers brought up the only other topic that we really had was
Bill
Bill Maher
Maher.
kind of changing his mind on Trump a little bit. He's not going MAGA or anything like that, but he did say, meeting with Trump personally, and it was set up through Kid Rock, you know, I think he actually has a little bit of grudging respect for Trump in private now,
Yeah,
because he met him and said, yeah, he's actually not Lucifer incarnate.
I mean, Trump is a showman. He does stuff performatively. We know this. I don't. And when they say things like that, like, "Oh, MAGA, can you believe Trump is?" Like, no, we know he's a stand up comic when he does his rallies. He's making jokes. We don't, like, we know that
Yeah, he
he's
said lock her up
exaggerating
for how many months, but did he ever lock her up? No.
because
Did
Trump
they try
also
it to him? Yes.
yeah because Trump also knew that it would be terrible for the country to actually do that. The way that and he says, like when he's doing his, like you can see when Trump goes genuine versus when he's being a showman.
Yeah.
And when he was doing his interviews about it, he said it would be terrible for the country. The best thing to do is to just be, is to, like be successful. That's our revenge. Like we're going to come in, we're going to do right for America, and we're going to be successful, and they'll just be moved on from.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Trump really thinks. Like he doesn't need to put. He's not going to. I'm going to tell you guys right now. He's not going to put anybody from the Biden administration in jail. not, I mean, unless they overturn, and like come up with something pretty crazy that we don't already know about, and we already know about a lot. He's just going to move on.
Plus, they
Trump
were all
wants to,
pardoned.
yeah, Trump wants to move. Yeah, Trump wants to move forward and just make them like he. I mean, he says it, make America great. He wants all of. If you are an American citizen,
America
regardless,
first.
regardless of your color, creed, religion, whatever. If you are American, Trump is wants you to be successful and be able to take care of your family and have a good life. It's that simple, because when you can do that, guess what you can buy? Real estate.
Yeah.
Trump's a real estate guy. He
I
wants
mean, the
people to be able to
stated
buy stuff.
the stated, financial policy of this term is we really don't give a crap about Wall Street right now. We're going to try to do everything we can for Main Street. He's
I
trying to put money back into the middle class and grow the middle class into actually being successful and
Yeah,
not having the
Scott.
boot of government on their necks.
Yeah, Scott Bessent said it clearly. Like, Wall Street has been decoupled from Main Street for 40 years in the United States.
Yeah, what I
Wall
was saying at the
Street, yeah,
beginning, the
it
stock
doesn't.
market is not our economy.
Yep.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Um, I see Slender saying Trump just wants Biden to know that everything he did amounted to nothing and move on. I think Trump unfortunately knows that Biden will never know that, because won't remember that he was even president. So,
Yeah,
but
but
Obama
but
will.
Dr. Jill might.
But Obama, yeah, but Dr. Jill and Obama will. Yeah, so it it's pretty clear what Trump likes to do. It's crazy to say that someone genuinely just loves his country and wants people to be have. Nobody who met Trump in person for 40 years had bad things to say about him. I know they always bring up like these companies didn't get paid, so they sued him. Well, that was they're suing the Trump organization. I'm talking about like
Yeah,
on a personal level,
those were
one on
business
one.
dealings.
Yeah, he's Trump is, like, you know he's a pretty straightforward guy. He wants to do that. He telegraphs exactly what he's going to do, and he's doing it. And now we've
Hmm.
got that. And Bill Maher, Bill Maher, and this is, I think, where
Bill
Bill Maher
Maher
was
had
talking.
personal issues with Trump.
Well, I
I mean,
think,
that's why he's been so absolutely crazy about
yeah,
Trump over this whole time, was because Trump made fun of him or something back in the day. I can't remember exactly what set it off, but Bill Maher was taking it beyond politics to a level of TDS of at a personal level. I mean, they all have a little bit of TDS, but he had it at a personal level about things that were specifically said about him. Think like Rosie O'Donnell level of
yeah.
personal levels.
God, he broke her. It's like,
Yeah.
man, it's I think, and that's where I think Trump. Oh, there it is. Randall says Trump
Randall
sued
saying
Maher
Trump
over a
sued
joke.
Maher over Joe. Okay.
Yeah, and stole Bill Maher's girlfriend, probably. So
Yeah, I
there's a
couldn't
couple of
couldn't
different
remember what
things.
actually set it off, but it was something more personal than most people have with
Yeah.
him.
But I mean, that's the thing where Trump doesn't hold that kind of like. I think Trump has shown, like, he had Gretchen Whitmer at the Oval Office this week.
And she hit her face.
Yeah, and which was hilarious. But he was talking about because she was doing something that he wanted, like was helping with, I forget which policy or thing that she was actually, as the governor of Michigan, she was actually being helpful to him because it was to help for probably, I think, some of the auto manufacturing up there.
Right.
And so he was being respectful and giving her praise for doing a great job on that. Trump does that. There's clips people always like to roll out where Trump gave Newsom praise for one of the disasters when he was in his first term for being good at what he was doing. Trump
Yeah.
doesn't hold, like, he's transactional. If in the moment
Everybody
you're
knows
doing
how to
something,
deal with Trump. The second you bend the knee, he literally forgives and forgets everything. Like, the guy has no memory of anything that was said before, and everybody has stated this. Anybody who has gone in and actually, met with him, people like say Ted Cruz. Trump said some bad things about Ted Cruz.
said his
Trump
dad killed
bloodied
JFK.
him. Yeah, he politically bloodied him. But the second Ted Cruz says, "Okay, yeah, you're right," Trump never brings it up again. It's
How about Ted
out of
Cruz?
his head, gone.
He's an amazing senator. He's wonderful. He's brilliant.
Yeah,
And but that's the thing. And as soon as you cross him again, you become persona non grata. People like to joke about, like, the way Trump was said really nice things about Thomas Massey, and then got mad at Thomas Massey when he was trying to hold up some of the congressional legislation lately. Is
Sure.
like because that was a new thing when he was Massey had done the right thing, and
If you do the
and
right
then
thing, you get a
you get
treat. You
praise.
do the wrong thing, and you
You
get smacked with the newspaper.
yeah, like Rosa brings up in chat Marco Rubio,
Little
little
Marco
Marco,
Rubio.
yeah, and now Marco, honestly, he's one of my top
He's been one of the
surprises.
most effective
He's been
people.
fantastic. And he is getting these visas. I think like if China dicks around like one more time, I think Marco is ready to just negate and send home every person from China on a student visa, which would be wonderful.
Yeah,
Just
I
like
mean,
send them all back.
there are so many Chinese students in America, and all it's doing is propping up some of these universities with, more tuitions. But we don't need any of these Chinese students in our colleges because all they do is basically get their education here, take it back to China, and work there. They're not here to do anything for the U.S.
Well,
except for pay universities,
the other
or they
alternative
steal
is,
our
or
technology and take it back to China.
they burrow within American industry or government and start sending stuff back.
Right.
Xi Jinping's
It's
daughter
a
is
theft
living in the
program.
United States in Massachusetts and has a fucking like CCP, like police detail protecting her, which is
Yeah.
fine in secret. Yeah,
In
I think
secret.
Eric's right. All foreign student visas should be ended, or at least 90%. I think, yeah, you keep that 10%, like where we have like these brilliant kids who are coming from wherever, and we want to let them bring in. There's already a visa class for that, where it's like you bring something to America that we don't have, and your tangible gifts will make us better. Then yes,
Sure. I mean,
we
that
should
used
keep
to
that.
be how we did
Yep.
immigration.
That's 100%, by the way, how we bring in athletes like for the Olympics. When you're like, hey, it's amazing how we sucked at distance running and then we just imported a couple Kenyans and now we're contenders for Olympic distance like
Right.
medals.
Or you bring in the Russian gymnastics coaches to coach our athletes.
Oh, you're talking about the Karolis?
Bela Lugosi or what? No.
Karoli.
Yeah. Karoli. Yeah.
Lugosi was Dracula in the 1930s.
Yeah. It was the wrong Bella.
Yeah, and then his wife Marta, but that ended very badly in the long term
Yes, it
based
did.
on them
Some
allowing,
of the actions they took.
yeah, some of the things we should have known because not so good. The Romanian system wasn't great either. My wife really loves gymnastics, so she read a book a few years back about from a Romanian gymnast about how there was basically a cycle where you became an Olympic Romanian gymnast, you would win your medal, and then you become an oligarch's plaything for money
Right.
afterwards. And that was
Very
like
flexible.
that was the pipeline. That was the dream. Like this is
That
how
was
you
the
make your money.
dream.
That's how you make your money and get out. So I don't. So it's not shocking that the Carolis might have, in the effort to win, allowed some people of questionable character who did really bad things to our female
To
gymnasts
have
into the.
access.
I mean, that one dude from he was a. By the way, he was also a Michigan. I think it was Michigan State. He worked for one of the Michigans as their like team doctor there too, and was doing things. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just the U.S. gymnastics teams. He was also facilitated doing
At
it
the
in
collegiate level.
at the higher education level, because once again, institutions that seem to have no problem throwing shade at conservative ones, like for instance the Catholic Church and its rightly reviled scandal, the numbers that education does in terms of
Public
kid
schools.
touchers
Yeah.
is dwarfs the Catholic Church.
I
Dwarfs.
mean, at this point, it seems like every week we get 2 or 3 women getting arrested in the public school system for inappropriate contact with students.
By the way, I am going to agree with, there was someone on X who was like, look, if we're going to talk about one group of people being a problem, we should talk about another, honestly, which is the number of the female teachers that are touching the kids. It's got
Yeah.
to be like 95 to 5, like white suburban mom types. And we need
Well,
to
they're all
kind of,
like 23-year-old
yeah,
girls that are teaching in high school
yeah.
level. probably not the best place to start out your
Yeah.
education career, being a 20-year-old girl dealing with people that are only 3 or 4 years younger
And
than you.
this is I see this. See, this is the thing. Like Randall saying, "We're all these hot teachers." When I was 16, it's it's such an oversimplification to just say like, "Oh, he's like, he's living the dream." But he's middle school, and some of these kids are middle school age.
Yeah.
N- I don't care if the girl is attractive, and I guess it might make it better if she is, but whatever. Um, it's
I guess it
it's
might make it better.
it's these women are manipulating them, taking advantage of their positions, and I think they end up screwing these kids up for life. It's going to cause damage. Doing I'm s- it's it's an oversimplification to be like it's a hot teacher, so it's going to be okay. There's not going to be lasting emotional or consequences to that. But I don't like that idea. I mean, it's kind of devaluing the male. Like, look, if it was a girl,
Well, I
people are
mean,
like, oh, she's
everybody's going to make the joke of, yeah, the same thing Randall Orser said of where were all these hot teachers when I was in school. But
was it
yeah,
South
it's
Park did
still
that
predatory
episode?
behavior.
Yeah, where South Park did the episode where it was Ike. It was Kyle's little brother in like kindergarten,
Yeah,
and when he tells the police that the teacher's doing that, the police response was nice. It's like
right.
good for him. What are we going to arrest him for? Being the luckiest little boy ever. It's like,
I mean,
it's
obviously that's the joke, but yes, it is still predatory behavior when a woman does it.
Gojira's right. Like
Because if a man did it, yeah,
no one gives a hot male teacher or a priest a pass. Like, oh, they're attractive, so it's okay. She must have wanted it. No, 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 no. You're there's a lot of psychological damage that gets done. And I I just don't like. It's just a weird thing. I get a little touchy about it, but I think it oversimplifies the male, like how we're not fragile, but how it is something when a man has relations too young, it does damage. It messes their psychology up. It's not healthy. I mean, ideally, if you're living a good Christian life, you're going to probably try to wait till you're I mean, I guess it's 2025, so sometimes it sounds bad to tell them to wait for marriage, but to at least wait till you're in a committed relationship that you feel is going to be going into the future and you're mature enough to do it. If we sit on this stage and say that kids who are 13 shouldn't be agreeing to body modifications or permanent like healthcare choices, we should say that people who are like 13 shouldn't be engaging in that kind of behavior because it does long-term consequences too. I think that's fair
right.
as a thought.
Yeah, maybe go back to teaching some abstinence.
Yeah, or at least abstinence is great. At least when Brahma, you can probably speak to this. Kids our age, we got the shit scared out of us because HIV and all those other things
AIDS,
were,
yeah.
yeah, I swear to God, like, I don't know why, but because like sixth grade, when you do your health class, for me, that was around 1993. So it was right after Magic Johnson had like come out having AIDS. It
Hmm.
was like the health class was basically if you have sex with someone, you're going to get an STD.
Right.
And it was like if you wear a condom, you might not get one, but you're probably still going to get an STD.
You're
It
still
was
gonna.
you're still going to get one. I mean, didn't it feel that way when you were in the health class? Like everything, like if
Well,
you do anything, you're getting an STD.
I went to a private Christian school, so we didn't really have the health class in that way. It pretty much was teaching abstinence because they didn't have to deal with the government mandated classes. But
Yeah,
yes, it pretty much was STD.
I swear it was that's how it felt. I don't know
It was
when that
effective.
changed. I know, and it was super effective. That was the first time like teen pregnancy was like starting to go on the downturn in years, and then
And then we
suddenly,
found out that Fauci lied to us about that too.
yeah, yeah. And then some it was around the 2000s where all of a sudden I think it was because again the pharmaceutical companies found a way to not cure you but just pharmaceutically hook you for life on
Neuter the
these
virus.
HIV drugs.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden it was just like now you can do it, you just need to do it responsibly and it's okay. And then I think social media is where it coincided with the dating apps where all of a sudden it was like, oh no, it's fine, just you can get, there's treatments for everything, you're fine.
Yeah.
And then next
And
thing
then
you
we
know
get
we
to
have
the timeline of OnlyFans where a chick gets railed in the rear entrance by 50 guys and has to have surgery to correct her anatomy.
and that's when they started pushing the HPV vaccine too on all these kids, like, oh, you should
Yeah,
get
I
that.
don't know why you need an STD vaccination at 6 months old.
Yep. And when
There's
man
no reason you should be needing anything to do with an STD vaccination as an infant,
I am so happy we had our son before COVID. Not just because, but
because now we question more than we did.
no, no, because the doctors, like when we said we didn't, like we were like, maybe no to this vaccine, and we're gonna spay.
Right,
I told when we went to the pediatrician, you had to have an appointment with your pediatrician before they would like let you leave the hospital.
right.
And when you go to the pediatrician, they immediately try to schedule you for the entire like
For
fucking like
275 different
200.
shots within the first
So
year.
what I told, like, and we got the vaccinations, but what I told him was like, I'd like to do what like one or two at a time. We,
Right.
like, we're not gonna like stick him. Like they were like, no, it's fine. We just want to do it at once. I was like, no, look, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm fine with doing these ones, but I think that's a
Just
lot
don't
on a little.
trust the schedule
Yeah,
that they put
yeah.
them on.
This is a lot on a little body. I'd like
Hmm.
to space it out. And the doctors were at that time were like, yeah, I guess we can do that. That's fine. And so we spaced it out over the course of like the year.
And today we're getting closer to, yeah, we'll just take your kid.
No, and that's what it is. So,
I
and
mean,
I think by spacing it out, it was fine. He didn't ever have any, like we talked about, like the would tell us about the reactions we should expect. He had none of those because I think we did space it out. Like we're like he's going to be very lethargic, this, that, and the other, and because I think we spaced it out, he was fine.
right.
And when when we look at, like we started look after COVID, you could see the little pop-ups on every pediatrician's website that said you are not allowed to question the vaccine schedule. If you do not follow the vaccine schedule, we're not going to give you appointments and we will not allow you to be our patients.
Which is where the distrust comes in and where RFK questioning the schedule. It's not
Yep.
being anti vax, it's being, is this all necessary on the timeline that they're doing?
They
Because vaccines in
yeah.
general have eradicated a number of things. Of course, bringing in a whole bunch of illegals that have never had any vaccines has also created some new situations, say with measles and other things that we had gotten out of this country. But yeah, we got to start wrapping.
Yep.
Also, Davina says it's an exit only hole, not a clown car.
Yeah, that's unfortunately OnlyFans is changing that. But yeah. Um so
So
yeah,
what do you got
good.
coming up?
We got Tuesday night Mad Show, Mad Pep, and I got to check with him if he wants it to be the last one he sent me or if he has a different one. And then so that's Tuesday at like 10:15 Eastern time on Mad's new channel. Although it seems like he's simulcast on his other channel too.
Yeah, he's
That
just
is
trying to get all of
also,
his old channel people
yeah,
to take notice
that
and get to the new channel.
that the 15th, also my last day of current employment. So fingers crossed, and hopefully if everybody can throw a couple good words in with their prayers for my interviews this week, I would love to be able to not be unemployed that long. Luckily, I'm not like these government workers who have such specialized skills they can't find any other job. That's been hilarious, by the way, on LinkedIn, Brahma. People are like, I'm a
Yeah,
specialist in third world sexual assault survivors, and I can't find, private sector just doesn't seem to be interested. It was like, yeah, they're not.
This one was bad, but I don't know if you saw the meme on Twitter yesterday that was going around about LinkedIn. It was a elephant using its trunk to manipulate itself, and describing that as the whole ecosystem of LinkedIn.
that is that is an accurate kind of statement.
Yeah, a little bit crude, but true.
Man, by the way, LinkedIn has turned super political, man. It is crazy. It used to
Mhm.
just be like the boring job social media site, but
Right.
it is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, it's a cesspool of, and man, do they all hate Trump because they're all government, or at least in my circle, because it's
Yep.
all, because I work in Northern Virginia. So they're so pissed off. And a part of me is like, I'm really sad I got laid off. And another part of me is like, I'm glad this is happening. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I
And then Ascendant
have,
Art
and you got to
podcast
send an art, right?
Friday on, yeah, we're going to do Moblands episode 3, which is coming on tonight. And I'll have it up earlier this week for you guys if you don't have that. And because that's the one thing I know we're definitely covering. I think this week, what is coming out? I know another movie that's of note. So we'll probably have a review of what comes out this week. It
Whatever major
is
release.
Sinners. Ooh, Sinners looks good. That does look like a good movie. So yes, so probably a review of Sinners. Mobland 3 and Sinners review on the table.
Slender is asking accountant too.
That's
I
the
don't
week
think that's out
after.
yet.
No,
It's
that's
next
going to be
week.
the end of the month. So we'll be going to that one. I'll drag you to that one.
Cool.
Sinners as well if you want to see it, Slender, just let me know. All right, what do you got, Brahma?
Well, I'll be doing Tuesday night with Mad, and then I'm in Vegas all week, so probably no shows. I'll probably, do some guest spots on whatever's happening while we're in Vegas. Um, we do have the bracketology going for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think 70s is going to do a special show probably on either Thursday or Friday before you guys' show to do the chat pick, because the brackets are going to be locked on, I believe, well, not locked, opened on like the 16th or 17th, because the season ends, I think, Thursday, and the playoffs start on Saturday. So we can't do the chat bracket on Saturday because it'll already be going. So he's going to try to do a show. If you guys want to sign up for the bracketology for Bourbon and Boarding, just DM me or go to my email on my YouTube page. It's brahmabull.socialmedia@gmail, and we can get you the sign up details. It's just going to be for fun and bragging rights. So yeah, I won't be doing many shows this week. It'll be comics on Monday, and then Mad show on Tuesday, and then I'll be in Vegas. So no show next week either, because I'll still be in Vegas and because it's Easter. So hope everybody has a great Holy Week and a happy Easter, and we'll see you in 2 weeks as far as this show goes. So
Yep.
that's what's happening.
All right. Thanks for hanging out, chat. It's been great.
Yeah, and thank you for the super chats. Hope everybody has a great week, and we will, as usual, give you the intro as an outro. Catch y'all later.
Bye, everybody.
Broken system chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, oh, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we